With that, one thing I will mention real quick. This here is something new law about equine and livestock liability. So if you have livestock on your farm or your river or anything like that, these signs, suppose if you have them up and you're notifying the public, you cannot be held liable for injury to livestock or any of that kind of stuff. They might be able to explain better, but it's a liability law, it's protection. So, Leslie, do you want to say anything?
No, thank you. Go right ahead.
All right. At this time, I will introduce Brent Hayden, and if you want to come up and start your time, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Brent Hayden. I'm an attorney out of Columbia, Missouri. I have a practice down there and focuses heavily on agricultural law, and so they asked me to come tonight and talk a little bit about eminent domain and the way it ties into some of the things that are going on up here, obviously with Ameren. So I just want to provide a little information about what we know as far as what's public from Ameren regarding their plans for the Mark Twain transmission lines up in this part of the world, and also to talk about the law on eminent domain generally as it applies to utilities and government agencies, and just the way those suits work and the way the law works and ties into those suits. So, and this obviously it's not too many of us here tonight. You got questions like that as I go along here, just feel free to jump in and ask. And I'm gonna work through the slides, and we'll talk about where things are at. I think everybody knows eminent domain generally is a power that the government has, and that they also can hand out to private entities like utilities and sometimes even just straight private businesses that allows the government or utilities and other entities to come and take private property when it's for public good or for public use. Now, obviously, everybody's idea of what public good or public use is differs, and so that sometimes is where the devil is in the details, and it gets sticky on, is it really a public use or is something really a public benefit? And obviously, there's a second question, even if it is, why should they protect somebody's stuff on the private side of the ledger? But the law makes certain provisions for that, the Constitution does, and that's what I want to talk about tonight. I'm going to have to pull this over here, be able to move my slides. Oh, I do want to say something about the sign real quick here. This is a great deal. For a long time, we had the law in Missouri that if you were equine providers, if you had a riding stable or a trail ride place, you could put a sign like this up, and it really could protect you from a lot of liability. It basically made it where if you put a sign like this up, the only way you could be held liable for somebody's injury on your premises as it related to your horses was if you were what they call grossly negligent. That's if you went out and did something really crazy to, I guess you put a kid on a horse and hit it with a hot shot or something. I don't know. You had to do something pretty crazy to pick up liability. So that only applied in the equine world, and we didn't have it for livestock providers and in other contexts. This last year in the legislature, they amended the law that had given that protection to equine providers and gave it to all livestock facilities. And so they've now had to, the reason we've got new signs out here is because they've had to amend the sign to include other livestock facilities. It's a great deal, particularly if you've got people on your place a lot, for ag tourism providers, anybody who's got livestock, or you've got folks coming on your property, or even if you don't, you've got somebody who may just be a trespasser who shows up. A sign can provide a lot of protection from liability, and so it's a very cheap way to get ahead of the curve in terms of getting sued on livestock. And that's a great deal. The Farm Bureau and a lot of our other ag associations in Missouri worked on the last session and put a hard on the legislature brought us. Senator Munslinger from this part of the world was very involved in making that happen, as always, and taking care of Aggies, and so it's been a good deal. Back to eminent domain. I think it's interesting on the Ameren Mark Twain project up here, the level of organization and energy within farm community and just rural communities up here in general about this project has been very interesting. It's been good to see. I know some of y'all I've seen some of you meet with other places where I've talked about this same topic. And I know a lot of folks up here have been very engaged about this, so I apologize if some of this is redundant, but I wanted to go briefly over what the project is. Eminent is looking to run a big set of transmission lines from Kirksville down through northeast Missouri, across several of the counties up here. They say they need more lines to carry electricity, and they say that this is partly being driven by new renewable energy standards that we have in state law and the federal government that say more and more energy has got to come from renewable sources at a minimum percentage. And they're saying that, you know, our current grid is insufficient long-term to carry electricity to meet needs we need to meet. That's, which is pretty generic, and that's usually the justification that every power company has when they want to run lines. And to be clear, Farm Bureau, state Farm Bureau policy is neutral on this question. This is important because Greenbelt Express, which was a wind transmission line that was built just a little south of here, Farm Bureau has explicit policy opposing that construction of that project. This Mark Twain project is not something the Farm Bureau as a statewide organization has taken a position on one way or the other. But we do want to help provide some information tonight. I'm a Farm Bureau member and obviously interested in these issues as they affect northeast Missouri. Here's a map showing a couple of the proposed lines that they run now. Obviously, several different places across Knox County as they move forward with the project that Eminent is looking at. Here's a specific map for Knox, and I know some of you have probably seen the maps that show where this line will come over your property. As far as the list of counties, on down the list that would be affected, Schuyler County, Adair, Knox, Lewis, Shelby, and Marion are all, and you know, Shelby is maybe with the line dropping in, but everywhere else probably is going to be affected by this line as it comes down across. These two lines, there's two segments they're looking at between their Maywood station of Palmyra and going back to the Kirksville station and then on up and into the Iowa border is their plan in terms of how they want to run this. They did have this slated to begin construction in July of this year. Obviously, that hasn't happened yet, and we're behind that they're going to get that done on schedule and on time. Obviously, to get that done, they've got to go out and acquire the easements, get it all staked out, get it all cleared out, set the foundations, build the poles, put up the wires. It's obviously a tried and true method in terms of getting down the road. They had said they wanted to get the lines actually up, functional, and turned on by 2018. Being that they're behind schedule on construction, who knows what they're going to get done in terms of timing as far as that goes. They're looking at, in terms physically, their proposal involves a single shaft steel poles. What they say they want to use. Now, whether or not that's going to ultimately be what they end up with, who knows? Because these projects have a way of, like everything else, there's some mission creep, and you don't know once they get in, they may adjust their plan on that. They're looking at a concrete base, 25 to 30 feet, 7 to 10 foot wide. Obviously, a tall pole takes pretty deep footing to support it. Looking at one pole every 850 feet, so it's 6 to 7 poles a mile. Looking at 90 to 130 feet in terms of, so these are just the physical characteristics of what they want to do. Also seeking 150-foot wide permanent easements around these poles. So the pole in the center, you're looking at 150-foot easement total as the corridor to go through there. That's 150-foot. They can chop and maintain if they want to. Now, generally, in a lot of places, you know, just because they have that 150-foot, it's too expensive for them to maintain that wide of a swath. So a lot of places they won't trim or those trees that far out if they can help it. And, you know, just like everybody else, running equipment is expensive. It doesn't necessarily mean that they'll use that full 150, particularly after construction. But oftentimes, in many places, at least during construction, you know, they'll use a good big chunk of that easement to get in there and get things built as it runs along that line. They're saying they don't want to seek easements. It's a little misleading the way we got this on here. They don't want to seek easements in from the side, come in and service transmission lines coming in from the side. They'd like to have a nice long corridor where they can go down and go along. But it doesn't mean there won't be a few places, as it's typical of these projects, but they'll see service corridors or service roads in as part of their maintenance plan. They're saying in general they don't want to have very many of those. They want us to have a way they can go a long ways along that pole, along the line and work on it. And they're saying, of course, you'll be able to farm underneath these and that they'll reimburse for damages during maintenance and construction. And again, this is one of those devils in the detail kind of things. That may be true, but obviously getting to the price that makes sense for maintenance is going to be part of the problem here in dealing with Eminent in long-term, short-term and long-term for that easement. So I want to talk about the legal side of compensation because, first of all, let me talk a little bit, and I'm on a slide on this, let me talk about how companies get approval to go in and do these kinds of projects. They have to be approved by Missouri's Public Service Commission, which is an appointed body that oversees utilities generally, but one of their key functions is they determine who, when, and where gets the right to use eminent domain in the utility sector. State statute, we'll see a slide on this in a second, it generally gives the power to all sorts of public utility entities to use eminent domain, but they still have to go get a certificate from the Public Service Commission for each specific project before they can go out and actually have a government-sponsored power to take people's land for fair compensation. If they don't have that, then they're just like the rest of us. You can't just take whatever we want to take when we want to take it. This is in the case of the Gold Belt or the Grain Belt Express, which is the wind power line that's to the south of us that has been proposed. They've been battling for several years now in the Public Service Commission. A lot of that's come to the head in the last 6 months, trying to get a certificate of convenience so they can go out and use eminent domain to take a corridor of land and run those lines across. Public Service Commission for that company has just recently refused to give them that certificate. And there's a lot of interesting reasons for that. There's a lot of interesting politics that have been involved in it. But that's a good example of where the Public Service Commission has that authority, and while in the past they've generally given utilities the right to use eminent domain whenever they've asked for it. In the case of the Rainbow Express, they didn't. They said, no, we're not going to let you do that, and there's a host of reasons that they did that. Eminent is essentially in the same boat right now. For this project, they've got to go and get Service Commission approval to move ahead. I think it's more likely they're going to get it, and I'll talk about that in a little while as to why that is, but that's part of the process. But let's go back and talk about compensation with eminent domain, because this is an important part of your rights under the Constitution, under state law. When they wrote the federal Constitution and the Bill of Rights all the way back at the founding of the Republic, one of the principles they put in there is that the government cannot take your land or your property, any of your property, without paying you for it. So part of the Fifth Amendment says private property shall not be taken for public use without just compensation. So they built in the idea that the government can take property for public use, but they can't take it and not pay you. And there was obviously one of the reasons for that was in most of the European systems that we come from before the founding of this country, if the king wanted something, he would come and take it and not pay you. It's interesting, there's a couple stories even in the Bible about they have a big row where the king wanted a vineyard and he'd go and get it and not pay. This was seen as a big injustice, but what were we going to do? We couldn't do anything about it. In England, it was a little bit different. It was seen as one of the rights of free Englishmen, even in a monarchy, that if the king took something, he still had to pay you. And that idea came over here with us, and it ended up in our Constitution. So it's an old principle. They can't take your stuff if they don't pay you for it. We put that same principle in our state constitution. Very similar. Our state constitution has a provision that says private property should not be taken or damaged for public use without just compensation. So our right to go ahead and seek compensation goes not just to the statutes and normal laws that are passed by our legislature, but actually in our Constitution as well, at both the state and federal level. Now, eminent domain powers, you'll see it also called condemnation. A lot of times we'll say a city society uses power of condemnation to run a sewer line, and they'll take a corridor where they can run a sewer line. And so you'll hear me talk about, I may today say condemning authorities. That's one of the legal terms of art for any, we use to refer to any entity that has the power to use eminent domain or is going to use eminent domain. Chapter 523 of the revised statute sets out the eminent domain powers and procedures. I put this in here just so you can see exactly how many different entities have the power of eminent domain in the state. In theory, it's a long list. Roads, railways, telephone, telegraph, some of these would not surprise you. Other of them might. Oil and gas pipelines can get in that. Liquid fertilizers, there's places that you can, I don't know that that's ever actually been used for that, but in theory, a liquid fertilizer provider could go if they wanted to run a line and use eminent domain to take it forward. And it says any other corporation created under the laws of the state for public use. So it's a very broad list that the legislature's laid out. Different kinds of entities that can go out and use eminent domain under certain circumstances. I want to talk about the process, and I've made this Ameren specific, but obviously this applies to almost any utility. The way it normally works is Ameren or whoever will come around and approach a private landowner about buying a corridor before they can use eminent domain. So they usually try to do that before they'll institute any procedure or put anything in place. And if they can get you negotiated down to a price that everybody can agree with, then they'll pay you that price and they'll take that corridor on the deed and go on down the road. Normally, utilities also are seeking merely easements, so a place they can run their line, but you can still continue to use that area as well. It's fairly rare that a utility actually tries to take land, what we call fee simple, where they try to take the whole bundle of rights and take it away from you altogether. They normally just want a corridor where they can run their cable or run their pipeline or whatever they want to do. And that's going to be the case with the proposed Ameren project here. They want to come in, have an easement that they can drive on, an easement they can put lines up on, but they're not trying to take away the use of the land under the lines forever. If you've got crop or pasture underneath there, long term you'd be able to use it. Although, with construction, obviously, there's almost always you're going to lose one season of production in that corridor, and you're going to have compaction and all the other problems that go with that. Usually, when they come in and make that first offer to buy a corridor, they're coming in, they're lowball. They come in under fair market value because they always think they can fall back on that court proceeding. And in the court proceeding, it's only one thing they have to do is fair market value. Whatever that number is, and that's an arguable number in your court proceeding. But they know that's kind of the ceiling, what they have to give. So they'll come in and give you often a 2/3 or 80% offer. I will say that's gotten better for these Missouri utilities in the last 10 or 12 years. Their initial offers tend to be better than they used to be. And part of that's because citizens have done a better job of getting organized. The internet's made pricing information a little more transparent. Obviously, we've had an active land market in ag for the last 10 or 15 years, and so there's a lot of transparency for land pricing in general. Enough ground is moved that people know generally in their area where ground is worth per acre. You have a slowdown in volume of trade on ground. Sometimes your notion of price and price transparency starts to diminish a little bit. People aren't sure what their ground's worth. That has not been a problem the last 10 or 15 years. I'm sure most of you, like me, are very keenly interested in what ground is bringing in your area. And you keep your ear to the ground, you know what it's worth. But normally when they come in, utilities historically have lowballed you. And you've had to push back if you want to get them close to fair market value. Now, if they can't, they have a right, if the Public Service Commission gives that to them, historically with Ameren they have, if they can't get you to voluntarily sell your ground, they have the right to go to court in the county where your property is located and sue you to force you to sell the property to them at a court-determined fair market value price. If that happens, if they're going to sue, the court then will notify the landowner you've been sued. They'll send you out a summons like they do in any other lawsuit, telling you when, where you need to show up, telling you that Ameren or whoever has sued you, but in this case we're talking about Ameren. They'll tell you when the first hearing date is. The condemning authority, whoever that may be, in this case Ameren or the government, whoever it may be, the first thing they are going to have to show the court is that they have the legal authority to actually take the ground or take an easement on the ground. It's rare that it occasionally happens that an entity will come in and say, we're going to take this ground, and then once you go to court, you find out they don't actually have the proper authority to take it. I've seen and heard that happening for some smaller entities, things like the cemetery districts or some small municipalities. They'll just assume they can do it in any context, and then they get to court and they find out size and sophistication, and by the time they pay lawyers to go to court, they're gonna have that part done right. And so presumptively, they're gonna be in a place where they can take it, and you'll move quickly into the valuation phase. So the court will say, okay, you have the right to take the ground, but let's talk about what it's gonna be worth. Now, the steps on that, on how they set valuation, is they appoint 3 commissioners to determine the value of the property. Now, this is not, these commissioners are not like county commissioners, where they're, I mean, it could be a county commissioner, but it doesn't have to be the county commissioners where they're elected. They just call them commissioners in the law for whatever reason. It's any 3 people, it can be any 3 people in your county. One of them, they have to be residents of the county, and generally, in practice, what the court likes to do is appoint people that are familiar with land values in the county, and so they'll often have an appraiser or somebody who works in an auction service, somebody who's working in the assessor's office, somebody like that, at least one person like that to sit on this commission of 3. Although I've worked on cases where it's just 3 farmers, because farmers tend to know what grounds work in rural counties. So they're going to appoint 3 people and ask them then to analyze the property and come back with a report setting a fair compensation price for what the ground being taken is worth. And whether they're taking all the ground or just taking an easement, those commissioners are supposed to go out, look at this corridor, set a fair price, and come back to the court and report on it. Now, the law sets out guidelines on how they're supposed to do their valuation of the property. They say that they're charged with finding the highest of the following values. One is an amount equivalent to the fair market value of that property. I have farm market up there, I got to type it, I apologize. It's the fair market value of the property. And that's for most of your normal property where you're out taking a strip of field, that's the determination they're going to do. Now, if they take a place that's got a homestead on it, so a house, barnyard, then they're supposed to do a 25% kicker on the top of that. So they're supposed to say, okay, if this is normally worth, $4,000, you add another $1,000 on top of that, because that provision was added to the law in part because of the controversy we had over the kilo cases back in the mid-2000s. You ever tracked any of the kilo cases? That was a series of cases that came out of the federal Supreme Court, in which they came from the East Coast, but this was happening all over the country. You had this problem where private developers would go in and get a city to give them eminent domain power to take private property, and they'd say it was for public use because it was for economic development, but really it was just letting a private entity take somebody else's ground for their own use. The kilo case itself, the reason they called them the kilo cases, there was Kilo versus City of something, I can't remember the city's name at this point, but it was a set of landowners in Connecticut who had a company come in, and the city allowed this company to take these landowners' land and build a shopping mall. I was working in Kansas for their livestock association at that time. We had a similar problem there where they took a whole set of neighborhoods to build a NASCAR track there. And they wanted to take a whole bunch of ranches to build a big private lake in southern Kansas. And so it was happening all over the country. And a lot of states said we got to take action. Different states dealt with it different ways. In Kansas, they said if you're going to do that, you pay double value. You just double up whatever it is, and you put another one on top of it. And the reason was normally the developers would come in and say, well, we're going to make you 12, 13, 15 times what this private property would under its current use. So they finally said, if that's true, then just pay them double, that shouldn't hurt them. Missouri didn't go quite that far, but Missouri did add some provisions that were helpful, and that was one of them. They said, if you're good, and this really, the nice thing in Missouri, this didn't apply just to private takings, it also applied to government takings and utility takings. You take a house, you got to put 25% on top of it. The other thing they said is that if you go and do a taking that prevents an owner from utilizing the property in the same manner that it was being utilized on the day of the taking, and if that land's been in a family for 50 years or more, then you've got to value in for a heritage taking. And so this is very important, obviously, for farm families, because people would say, I've got a century farm here, and the city is going to come out and take this property for some use, or even some private company. It probably wouldn't happen in Knox County, but if you got closer to St. Louis or Kansas City, you'd have a major company want to come out and take the ground. They said you've got to build in a number for that. And that is two slides on that there. Heritage value adds a 50% premium over fair market value. So homestead taking adds 25%. Heritage, if you take something that's got heritage value, land that's been in the family for more than 50 years, that's got a 50% premium over fair market value. Now, up in this part of the world, that could be, there's a lot of places that clause would probably be tricky. I imagine some of you here tonight that can't have ground that's been in the family for more than 50 years. And so that is a consideration as we move forward with Amber to think about. Now, remember, it's not just that it's been in the family for 50 or more years, it's also got an alternate use for it. It's not, you can't use it substantially the same way as you used it before the taking. So what gets tricky about that, so if you put a pole where you've got a barn and they have to tear that barn down, you're probably going to get that heritage value of 50% over because you can't use it the way you used it. If all they're doing is putting a pole down in a pasture, and you may lose that very small piece where they run the concrete and actually put the pole in, but you're probably not going to get that for the whole pasture because you can still graze the rest of the pasture. So it's not, unfortunately, it's not going to be the pathway to great riches, but it is something to at least consider as you go through these negotiations if you're going to affect a piece of land with Eminent. Now, once those commissioners go out and view the property, they come back to the court and they give the judge a report. They say, we've looked at the properties that are going to be taken, here's what we think they're worth, and they put that on the judge's desk. At that point, the judge will then inform the landowner and say, here's what the commissioners say, here's what they say it's worth, here's what you're losing, they're going to pay you for that. You can, as a landowner, you can accept that report, and at that point, the utility will pay you, and they'll go and use the land the way that they had intended in the lawsuit. They'll take your money and the case is over. But if you don't like the number that's come back from the commissioners, you have a chance to contest the valuation. And at that point, you can request, you say, I want to contest the valuation, and the court will just set up a standard jury trial. And you'll go argue to a jury what your land is worth using those same criteria. And you may even have those commissioners testify, but you can also go get your own appraisers to come in and testify and get whatever other evidence you want to come in and show that your land is worth more than what these commissioners say it's worth. Now, I'll tell you, farmland being a fairly transparent commodity price-wise, you'll have arguments a range of a few $100 amongst appraisers. It's rare that you would have, a valuation argument at two or three times the value of the pound. I mean, it's a fairly well-known price within most farm grounds. But it's possible to have those fights. In more urban areas, though, sometimes you'll get into a whole big fight about location. We're closer to this highway than we are to that spot. And you'll have wild ranges that people have a fight about in court on the price. But that is your remedy if you don't like the price the commissioners have brought back. You can go and just have a standard jury trial and make an argument. Yes, sir.
South of Kirksville, there's an airport.
Yes, sir.
You can understand why you wouldn't want to have a line going across the airport.
Yes, sir.
By the same token, if they cross my half mile on the diagonal, it's going to mess up my 24-row planter. It's going to mess up my 90-foot spread booms. Let's say we can arrive at fair market value for that tract.
Yeah.
But you can't put a line across the airport, and they're doing the same thing with my property.
Sure. So, what your remedy, well, first of all, during the negotiation phase, just so everything, I think I've been here, but the question is, we'll first talk about the Kirksville Airport. They're not going to let them put a line across there. And of course, nobody's going to let them do that, probably, because there's political leverage involved in Kirksville Airport. We have a similar problem that those gentlemen pointed out with, when you're farming, you got the same problem. You got a post there, and now suddenly you can't use equipment of the same size. It messes up where you turn around, messes everything in the ground. So, it's not just, I think what your point is, it's not just a matter of the raw price on the ground. They also mess up your whole method of farming and make it where you get farming.
Or buy another 80 acres that doesn't have any lines across.
Right.
Because that's what I paid for 3 years ago. I bought an 80 with no power lines on it, that they should have to replace me an 80 and not 100 miles away, living that proximity.
So I think that, first of all, I don't want to disappoint you this evening, but the odds of them getting a whole new 84-year road. But when you go and argue with them during a negotiation, or your lawyer, or whoever goes and argues with them during the negotiation phase, certainly can bring some of these other points up. I mean, that can all be rolled in. And if you went and you argue to a jury, you can argue all those things factors and say, look, I've lost, whatever, let's say they took an easement, I've lost a marginal amount of value, obviously, by the fact that they've got this easement across here, I've got compaction value, I've had to relocate, they created all these problems for me beyond just the mere immediate value of the land or the yields. You can take all that evidence to the jury, but you gotta convince them, obviously, your lawyer's gotta convince them, and that's like any case. But if those, there's not a specific list that says, oh, you can't consider those factors or reckon those factors in as far as the overall value. So you do get to have that argument. And I'm with you, I get it. I mean, there are all kinds of ways that they can mess your operation up beyond just the raw value of the ground. Yes, ma'am.
Wouldn't that fall in the farming and the
No. So the question is, would that fall under Missouri's right to farm? You mean, and
It's just farming operation.
right. And so the Missouri right to farm constitutional amendment said that the rights of farmers and ranchers are I'm paraphrasing now, but it's been many days pouring over that language, and I'm paraphrasing because I forgot it. I kind of wiped my memory, but it says that the rights of farmers and ranchers will not be impeded by the government. The way that works, like any other constitutional amendment, that's going to say they can't regulate you out of farming, but it's not a guarantee that nothing bad will ever happen to you, and it's not going to be able to interfere with the domain rights that are accorded to the government under other constitutional principles. So you're not going to be able to beat an eminent taking using the right to farm. I mean, I wish it was that broad, but it's not that broad. Any other questions before I'll move on here? So, I've kind of labored on this slide here, but you're going to have a jury trial that's a standard jury trial like any other jury trial. As far as, so we talked kind of about, I talked about the process, I talked about Eminent, what's going on with Eminent specifically. I like to talk a little bit, always at the end of these presentations, about common sense when you approach, because you all now have the wolf by the ears here with what's going on with Eminent. And I just talk about common sense in your approach. Really, this is like any other business negotiation at the end of the day. The only difference is that it's rare in other business negotiations that they can force you to sell. And the one problem that domain creates, obviously, is that when in any other private transaction, if I'm trying to buy land from you, or you're buying cattle from me, or whatever it is, you can walk away. There's a walk away price, and you just say, you know what, I'm not doing that, and leave. Eminent domain puts a wall behind you where you can't walk all the way away from it. You can fight about price, but they are going to usually, now they may get frustrated and give up. And that happens sometimes too. They say, you know what, there's an easier landowner to deal with. But with power lines that have to run on a line, obviously there's massive expense for them to make too many jags. And just like putting in a fence with too many corn posts, it's pretty wild. They make too many jags in the line. So there really is, there's there's a wall at your back where you can't completely walk away from this. You can only fight about price. That being the case, you want to be sensible in how you negotiate these things. You want to get as much as you can, but you also have to understand that at the end of the day, if they are dead set on coming to your property, you've got to get as much as you can, but you're not going to probably be able to beat it all together. The law just does not allow you to complete out unless you can go to the Public Service Commission politically and just keep them from giving authority out altogether. I'll talk about that in a second. But in general, these negotiations, you want a few things here. You can and should negotiate, obviously. You can negotiate on price on the front end. You can negotiate on pole and ditch locations. This goes to your question, sir. My father-in-law actually just he's in Northwest Missouri. And they had a pretty significant transmission line come through there from Kansas City Power and Light. And they came across them, and we got it negotiated down and got them to, I think we came up way ahead on price because we pushed hard. But one of the things that we also did with them is they had blueprints to show where they were going to run this. And they had a couple of poles they were going to set this property that they could have set them right on terraces on the top of a couple of ditches where they really wouldn't get in his way too much. And of course, the first guy you talk to who goes up there says, oh no, you can't, the the blueprint's safe, you can't change any of these locations. Well, when you pushed on it, you talked to your engineers, and it turns out there was 30 or 40 foot of leeway. I don't know if that's going to be the case for Amherst, I don't know what spec they're going to engineer to. But in that project, they can move poles. There's significant distance for you to get them. And in that case, they were pretty easy to deal with about that. We said, look, if you put a pole here, a pole here, you're not tearing up nearly as much productive ground and not getting in our way as much as we put it here, put it here. So we were able to negotiate that out, and that is the kind of thing you can negotiate out on top of price, try to get some of these convenience factors as you go. Now, that's not always going to be possible, but it is something you can do. Another thing a lot of people forget about when they go to negotiate this, there are relocation expenses. Obviously, those are real significant if they move you out of a house or out of a barn or whatever it may be. But even you've got to move anything around, or this principle goes to what you're talking about here, where we've got to change the way we operate, or we've got to use smaller equipment, or whatever the change may be. That's something that can tie into your negotiation strategy on the front end when you're trying to get the best price out of the utility. Another thing here is you can talk to your elected officials. Obviously, like I said at the beginning of this, you guys have a nice, energized local group here on these issues that are working hard. It's great to see. Particularly local officials in eminent domain fights can be very sensitive to complaints. In Knox County, obviously, is tiny, so in Knox County, local official here gets 15 phone calls. I mean, that's a lot. That represents a huge leverage of your local voting populace. People really sit up and listen to that. But really, that principle trickles all the way down, certainly in a state the size of Missouri. State legislature, you can get 15, 20, 30 phone calls about an issue. That can be a lot. You get a lot done. 30 people working hard making phone calls. So don't be afraid to talk to your elected officials. And this is like everything else in America. We know this in ag because there's not as many of us, so we have to get out and punch above our weight. Squeaky wheel gets the grease sometimes. You got to get out there and make that noise and get after it and let them know that you're not happy about what's going on. It may not completely fix the problem. You may still have to live with a few things you don't like. But you're always trying to leverage this thing more in your direction, or at least the final outcome may be closer to what you want. And this last slide, this is always one people don't like to see, but I would say be prepared to say yes eventually. If you've got a negotiation going and you're well above it, because these utilities have gotten smart about how they do some of these negotiations for PR purposes. They often will come in on the very front end and try to scoop up all the low-hanging fruit. Everybody they can get to this side kind of sign off and say yes because they don't want to mess with it. But there's a set of kind of the middle class of negotiators who will drive some hard bargain with them, but eventually, go ahead and make a deal. And then there's folks that say, nope, you got to take me to court. Usually, the guy who gets the best deal here is in that middle set of negotiators who hangs around till the end and pushes hard, but actually gets the deal done before he has to go to court. Because lawyers are expensive enough now that you can push them past a certain line because they know it's going to cost that much to go and litigate. They'll actually try to get the ones lately in the strategy I've seen out of a lot of these companies is they'll try to get as many of those barriers as they can, and then when push comes to shove, they'll come back in and litigate some chunky cases all at once so they can get as much efficiency as they can out of that team of lawyers working on, coming in and working on a bunch of cases but all in one big chunk. But there's that line in which, they know they can pay a little more than fair market price that's still cheaper than the lawyers to go out and fight it and take the risk. And so you have to push and push and push and push, but there often is an advantage in being ready to say yes at some point rather than saying you just got to take me to court. Now, an important caveat to that, given what's going on here with this project and what went on with the Greenbelt Express, is that where you really have a good mass organization to hang in on price, you can make it very difficult on the utility or on whatever entity is trying to take your ground. Doesn't mean they won't get it done eventually, but some of the community organization can really drive prices up for everybody if you're careful about how you coordinate it and you're determined. But understand that there's a cliff. At some point, you go over that cliff, they do take you to court, you might come out behind what you can get in the negotiation itself. So, and that's true of a lot of things in the law. This isn't the only area that's true. I settled a big family farm estate dispute today that had some of those same kind of characteristics where you're pushed up against the cliff, and everybody's got some risk, and you're gonna end up in a situation where somebody gets all or nothing rather than splitting the baby. Sometimes that goes to your personality. If you're the kind of person who says, well, that's what I want, I just want all or nothing, I don't want to be in a situation where they split the baby, and that's fine too. And that's how lawyers make a lot of money normally. But they get excited about those kind of clients. But there does come a point at which you say, we gotta say yes. You come out ahead, I should say, by saying yes. That's in those slides. Now, I do want to talk about what's going on in public service commissions, specifically within the context of both the Greenbelt Express and this line. In the Greenbelt Express, as I said earlier, that was a wind project, or a project with transmission lines to get wind power out of western Kansas over to Illinois and Indiana. The great political complaint about, or one of the political complaints about it, as it came across Missouri, was that it wasn't going to drop any or very little power actually in the state. Because it was mostly set up to be a superhighway of electricity from those wind towers over to the eastern grid, based out of Illinois and Indiana, and tied in there. The U.S. has two, there's some little local power grids as well. There's basically two main mass power grids. The eastern grid runs out to central Kansas, kind of in the middle of the Great Plains. And there's a western grid that takes off there and goes the other direction. There's some tie-in. One of the big problems they've had, and I used to work in politics in Kansas, so I saw these people too. One of the big problems, the dreams they've had in western Kansas, because there's nothing else out there, is they're going to run out of water, even though they can't have irrigated for one, they'll probably lose their feedlots eventually. They've got wind, that's one thing they've got. Because of the nature of low populations there, the power grids have been very sparse there, and they haven't had a good way to tie in these major power grids to get wind back out to either coast. So that's what the company who is trying to build the Greenbelt Express, they've actually got, I think, at least 3 other lines coming in other parts of the country. They've got investors and they've got government subsidies to try to run that power out into the grids. The problem they're running into in Missouri, obviously landowners, and quite rightly, I'm a farm advocate, they don't want somebody running a bunch of poles across their property, and rightly so. But one thing that has really slowed them down politically is that there's at one time I think the plan had no plan to have any drops. And then they kind of put in a cursory number of drops, or to drop some power into the state. And what I mean by that is lines coming down off of those main transmission lines, because this all runs on different voltages. Those run on a very high voltage, so you couldn't obviously just pull down those transmission lines and run it into your house. Don't do that. I heard about a guy in the news the other day got a hold of some 440 and he lost both hands and blew a leg off. So don't do that. And you can't do that. So they've got to find a way to downshift that power to be able to use it residentially. The Greenbelt Express, they kind of did that, but they never really got around to doing that. And that was one of the powerful things that really beat on them in front of the Public Service Commission. The Public Service Commission had 5 members vote on that. Vote to say no, we're not going to give you the authority to do that. And that was one of their main, you're a Texas company, you're not really going to bring us enough jobs, you're not bringing us any power, we don't really think we use a utility. Eminent is in a much different position, a much better position than folks with the Greenbelt Express are, because they have a long-standing utility in this state, in this region. And there's lots of other places that they have eminent domain authority. And they've got a transmission line that at least arguably is going to tie back into that does touch Missouri. For those reasons, I think their odds of keeping the authority for any project they want are much higher. And so I know I don't want to be very bad news, but I would say that my advice is to be emotionally prepared for the idea that they probably are going to get the main authority in this area eventually. You got to get prepared to have that negotiation and get the right place. It's not a guarantee. There's a chance, and there is litigation going on right now out of Marion County to try to slow this down. The neighbors group up here has intervened in front of the Public Service Commission, at least have a voice in how this decision is made. But just all of us talking, I guess we'll be live streaming on TV over here. I don't know, but I think that my belief is they probably will get the authority eventually, and so it's probably not a matter of stopping them all together. It's a matter of trying to get a strategy here to maximize price. So that is what I had on this topic. I will be happy to answer questions on this or any other topic. Yes, sir.
The 3 commissioners, 3 appointed some, are they any?
Yeah, so the 3 commissioners, you guys have 3 commissioners. The court appoints them. The tradition has been, for a long, every case I've ever been involved in, what they like to do is say, well, give me 3 names you can agree on. Or, the other way it's done is they'll say, you pick one, each lawyer, each side, and then you pick one together. So you have to each pick one and have one you can send together. So that's generally how it's done. And normally you can do that about, there's only 4,000 people in Knox County, there's not a lot of options compared to some places, you know, so, but that's how they do it.
Is that paid?
Is it a paid position? It is, the law makes a provision that they can be paid a reasonable fee and expense. But I've never seen anybody, I mean, it's not something you could retire, just being a commissioner all the time. So, most of the ones, I've got several friends that have been appointed to do it just because they happen to know real estate prices or whatever. And most of them have ended up, guys that get appointed to do it. And now, you know what's odd